Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. We're starting a new segment, and by we I mean me, that came about as sort of a curious discussion I had with local folks, and then my wife clinched it. She doesn't know this, but as I was talking to her about games and the videos I make, she said, you know, you spend almost more time reading the manuals than you do playing the games. She knows this because that's what I read at night, in the mornings, etc. Like if I'm going to work on a bus or whatever, it's usually Bible notebook pen and some sort of game manual that I read. So one of the things, as we were talking, was kind of getting into the theoreticals of what makes a good board game manual, board game rulebook. What are the things that make it good? Manual transmission is the first in a series of discussions, and by discussions I mean me talking and you guys probably commenting on how insane I am, on what makes a good manual. And I've come to a 10-point solution. Actually, I wrote down sort of the 10 basic building blocks of a manual that I look for ways that help me learn a game quickly and effectively and expediently. I've actually started. Our first rule book is going to be Aquatica. We're going to go over this rulebook and sort of narrow down the things, the points that I find about it that I think are essential, and then sort of bonus points for things it does well and demerits for what it does wrong. Again, this isn't a game review. This is specifically related to the manual because I have found that I have a very specific flow now with thousands of games in on how manuals work for me and the ways they don't. And I am also doing this to prompt discussion from others. I am very curious what sort of pillars people expect with their rule books. Again, I'm a slow learner kind of person. In game development, I've often referred to myself as a Clydesdale, not a thoroughbred, in that I will stop, analyze, seek out, look for information, slowly make my way sequentially like a glacier through a manual, whereas others tend to be more thoroughbred-like in that they can quickly pick up concepts, grasp them, and go with them. This is by no means a universal rulebook translation, like command and mandate from on high. It's really to invoke how I learn the manuals, and admittedly how I teach them, because how I learn them is how I'm going to teach them locally when it's my turn to teach, which is quite often. And also to kind of get other people's thoughts on what things trip them up or what things don't trip them up, and in some ways sort of evaluate the techniques and the 10 pillars I have versus sort of the techniques and the pillars that you guys have for how you learn. Again, this is separate from every one of these manual transmission segments is going to deal with learning from the rule book, not learning from videos or additional resources or how to play or whatever. It's going under the assumption that I am learning a game straight up vanilla eyes through this, and then of course there's always benefits. Even if a manual isn't quite what you want, there's so much of a wealth of information. Anyway, that's the longest intro for what amounts to a much shorter segment than you will likely get in a general game review. But that is manual transmission. Let's get rolling on Aquatica. Okay, let's go over the rulebook for Aquatica. Step 1, is there a one-sentence summary of what to do and why? Yep, goal of the game right here. You're playing as an Ocean King, struggling to find resources. You need to explore, recruit new characters, obtain locations, and complete goals. At the end of the game, whoever has the most priority points will be the winner. Excellent. Is there a table of contents that is clear? Absolutely. Components list. Yep. Everything is as it should be. There's a picture of the component or set of components. There is a description, short description, followed by a count of how many of each type are there. Everything's in its place. Everything is well stated. Setup. Let's talk about setup. There's a common setup and a player setup that are separated. That's good. The interesting thing here, and where it gets demerits, is that here you'll see the game board setup describing, but there's no real attachment. And the problem is that you have this third setup page here where you're needed to look over here, flip back and forth as you're setting up. Also, it's a little weird to have like, hey, step 2, look for number 6 kind of thing. It's not the game I'm trying to play. I'm trying to play the game it's describing. So that part would be better off if they'd simply have everything in a way that you could see everything you need when it's time to set up. Okay, and then you have the component breakdown, which I think is important, but not, I mean, where you see the actual pieces that have substance and that might need to be further described are mantas, resources, etc. Then you get into the how to play. Does the how to play have a nice game flow summary? In other words, does it give you specifically everything you need to know about how to play it at a high level and then break it down? And this does an excellent job of that. It describes the player turns, what everyone does on their turns. It then lets you know the difference between a main action and an additional action in this particular game, which works well to kind of describe the one kind of really tricksy part for new gamers that might need to be described. The information is good. It shows all of the things you can do as part of your main action: recruit, buy locations, conquer locations, raise locations, etc. It's score and scout, etc. Does it follow a sequential learning flow? It does, because you're going to see as you play, you're going to reveal just the right information at just the right time as you're learning about what to do. And so we get points of that. Every term or concept is explained prior to its use, and there are call outs for non-standard behavior. For instance, when you see information that might not be as obvious on how something works, it's called out. It kind of is ahead of the game in preparing you, and that's good. And finally, are there examples of substance? This is something I'm big on. When you're going to have a game example, is it one that's just the easiest one that you could have figured out anyway, or does it give a more complex example on situations you may run into for real and help resolve them in a way that simplifies learning the rules? And in this case, Aquatica does an excellent job. And finally, second to finally, is there a turn summary or a quick view or player aids? No, there are not. That is something I do like. I think part of it's because there's just not that much to summarize, although honestly it would be nice to have a small player aid or something that just at least narrows down quickly what are the options you can do. That said, it does offer a really good example of iconography and breaking down each of the different effects and such, and so that's helpful. And finally, the variants. When there's a variant, does it describe it fully, completely, and sensibly, and not litter it through the rulebook? And here we see the advanced modes described on one page, the solo mode described on one page. Bonus points. Does it have an index of terms and cross-references those terms in line? No. Does it have a long-hand gameplay example, like a large flow of several turns? No. Does it have strategy tips? Not really, kind of, but not entirely. Does it have designer notes or insights? No. And is it not a pizza box? Yes. And again, those are bonus points, not something I would necessarily expect from every game. And there you have it. That's Aquatica. I give it an A. I think it's an exceptional game manual, both for teaching and for quickly learning. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games.